Maybe we will get started here. What I'm going to say isn't that significant anyway, so I'm going to start us off here. My name is Donna Thiessen, and I am the scholarly communication librarian with Saskatchewan Polytechnic. And I would like to welcome everybody here today from the Saskatchewan Polytechnic Libraries, which are situated on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territory in Saskatchewan. And this territory is considered to be the homeland of the Métis Nation. So we respectfully recognize the Indigenous peoples of these lands as part of our ongoing commitment to good relations and a reconciled future. And we welcome everybody today into this virtual space as we take a look at the future of education related to OERs. I'd also want to recognize that Saskatchewan Polytechnic does receive funding for our OER programs from the government of Saskatchewan. And for this year, they're assisting us with our Pressbooks platform, which allows us to publish some of the OERs that have been produced within Saskatchewan Polytechnic and provides us a platform to develop other open education resources. So we are very appreciative for the funding that we do receive. So today we have Professor Rory McGreal here, who is joining us from Ireland, where he is at the moment, and we worked out the time so that he was able to attend. Professor McGreal is the UNESCO an International Council for Open and Distance Education Chair in Open Education Resources. So he has a lot of experience that he's bringing to tell us about the future here. He's also the director of the Technology Enhanced Knowledge Research Institute at Athabasca University in Alberta. As well, he's the editor-in-chief of the International Review of Research in Open and Distributed Learning. He's also the founder of the OER Knowledge Cloud, a repository of research articles on OER, and has held previous positions as the Associated Vice President of Research, the Executive Director of Telecommunication in New Brunswick, a Canadian province-wide e-learning network, and a supervisor at Contact North in Ontario. As well, he's the recipient of many national and international awards for open and distance education. We are so honored to have you join us today, Professor McGreal, and to share some of your information and your knowledge and your background in open education resources. So welcome.
I'll start off now by number one, thanking you for the kind invitation to speak to you. It's my pleasure to speak to educators across Canada, and particularly those in the other prairie provinces. So I'm very pleased to see the interest that you have in open educational resources. It's something that is dear to my heart, and I've been pushing for many years now. I'm going to start off with to let you know that these slides are under a Creative Commons license, and some of the images, however, are available as fair dealing for educational purposes. So you can use any of these slides, and you just contact me afterwards, and I can send you slides or one of the slides or all of them. They're available. I don't make them fully available on the open internet because of the images are under fair dealing, but just to let you know that. As a UNESCO chair, I must support, and I do it quite gladly, the OER Declaration of UNESCO on open educational resources. And what this declaration does, it defines OER, but it also states that OER, in order to achieve Strategic Development Goal 4 of UNESCO, education for all, that OER may not be the answer, but that OER are very important in achieving education for all. And so it's very strongly supported. The OER movement is by UNESCO. Now, we've just gone through the COVID coronavirus, and this has had a major impact on education, as I'm sure you all know. And globally, it's had a staggering impact, where the number of school closures has been incredible, and it's brought a huge movement away from traditional learning into open learning. And we feel that this movement into open learning will help us to realize what I believe is the challenge for educators for the 21st century. And that is that by 2025, there'll be about 100 million new students capable of learning at the post-secondary level, but they won't be able to do it. And John Daniel, 7 years ago, said that we would have to build 4 universities per week of around 30,000 students each in order to meet this demand. And so the only way we believe that we can meet this demand is by looking at the online learning and switching away from just the classroom, and perhaps not fully from the classroom, but we need to find different ways of how to educate all of these learners, people who would like to learn and don't have the accessibility. Our previous Governor General, Michael Jean, she tells us that education is a weapon of mass construction, and fully supporting UN's goals, saying that if we want to develop anywhere, education is the way to do it. If we want to improve the world, the best way is through the mass construction, which is education. So with the COVID virus, there's been this pivot to increased digitalization, and in recognition of the need for new skills and competencies, is that the digital world is the world we live in, and we need the skills and competencies to live in that world. And so digital education can give us opportunities for reskilling in the workforce. And it enables industries to be productive, innovative, and competitive. So this pivot that has been very sharp because of COVID, I believe was eventually necessary in any case, that online learning has to be part of learning in general. And it doesn't have to be just online learning, but certainly it is an important part. And we have it coming in now where there's webinars that we're having today, for example, there's MOOCs, there's all kinds of different ways of online learning. And suddenly, because of COVID now, it seems like it's a good idea. And before that, it wasn't seen that way. And I compare it to Cinderella becoming a princess, where previously distance education people thought, oh, you know, that's for people who can't really get into the classroom, and it's okay, but just isn't quite as good as the real thing in the classroom. And now, though, distance education has become a princess where everybody wants to do it now. All the traditional universities are into some form of online and distance education. So digital education is here to stay, and we're not going to escape from it. And so how do OER fit into this? Well, the UN definition is clear that they're learning, teaching, and research materials in any format or medium, and anyone can use them. The key point is that anyone at no cost can access them, repurpose them, adapt them, and redistribute them. And to do this, you need an open license. And the open license refers to the fact that to go back in 1962, the World Intellectual Property Office was formed, and it made everything copyrighted. Before that, if you didn't put a C symbol on, it belonged to the public domain. But since 1962, everything is copyrighted. So in order to free it up and allow people to use it, you need an open license of some kind, and the Creative Commons has given us these licenses. And they vary from the most free to some that are a little bit restrictive. They have their uses, but they would not be considered open educational resources. So CC BY, which is attribution, you add attribution to the open license, or attribution plus share alike, attribution, share alike, the non-commercial. These are OER. These are open licenses that can be called that. The other licenses have their uses, and they are where you cannot redistribute them, or you cannot change them. And those are not OER. They are open, but they're not recognized as being open educational resources. The OER, many people see them as just textbooks, but they're far more than that. They could be educational games. They can be podcasts. They can be video casts. They can be curriculum material. There's a wide range of different types. And now even we're entering into the area of artificial intelligence as open educational resources. So it's changing rapidly, but all of these things are OER. The key point is it needs to have an open license. That's what makes it any content an open educational resource. And I mentioned educational games there, and I don't know, I wouldn't think that too many of you know what a Twitch is in educational gaming. It's equivalent to 2 Jiffies, or 200 milliseconds. Well, electrons on a wire in 200 milliseconds can travel 25,000 kilometers. Well, guess what? There is nowhere on Earth further away than 25,000 kilometers. What does that tell us? That God, in his or her infinite wisdom, designed the world perfectly for playing video games. And so I think we as educators need to look a lot more closely at these games and how we can use them in education. So there are many open games, and they use these different licenses. You see the two on the left, attribution and share alike. These are the OER licenses. The others, non-derivative or non-commercial, they have their uses. For example, if it's a scholarly article and you don't want it to be changed, then you put no derivatives on there. And if you think you can make some money on it, I think a really a sad hope of some educators that they're going to make money. Very few can make money on their products, but then you'd put a non-commercial license on it. So as if somebody's making money, you get a share of it. But the way forward, I suggest, is simple. It's that all publicly funded content should be openly licensed. Our governments and our NGOs have no business whatsoever producing content and not leaving it open to the public. If the public pays for it, the public should have access to it. So with OER, they're for changing. This is a key point of OER, is you can mix them, you can adapt them, you can extract them from remove things that you don't want that are in there. You can localize them to your particular institution or class. You can translate them to another language. You can reuse, repurpose them in many different ways. This is a very important aspect of what an open educational resource is. And open means freedom and accessibility. So you see the accessibility chart size and the degrees of freedom, and open is right up at maximum accessibility and maximum degree of freedom. So OERs are open, again, mostly. They can be augmented, they can be edited, they can be customized, aggregated. You can create mashups with them. And that is the real value of open education resources, is we can use them any way we want as educators. And I'm bringing in the concept of, rather than creating courses, of assembling courses from freely available OER and putting them together to create lessons, putting them together to create courses, putting them together to create full programs. And the idea is to get away from the mentality that we have to create everything from scratch when we don't. There's lots of good material out there that we can use and make use of. So we need to think in terms of course assembly, a bit like an IKEA set or something like that. The parts there are many different components, but we need to be thinking in terms of assembling rather than creating courses. And when we do that, we increase access to high quality content, to additional learning resources, and we can have supplemental materials for our different courses. OER, they bring in savings and efficiency, because the marginal cost and effort in making copies and distributing online is zero, almost zero. So huge savings and efficiencies can be put together. And because some OER are readily available, some as full courses, some as full lessons, you can quickly and immediately take a course, a lesson, or whatever the OER's content is, and put it forward and do it with speed and immediacy. We can share OER as well. This is, again, a problem. If you have licensed, commercially licensed content, you're not allowed to share it. You have to get permissions in order to do that. And you can share any way you like. You can share it and use the OER in different ways and change the OER in different ways depending on who you're working with or sharing with. You can republish. You can take an OER and make all kinds of copies of it, send it everywhere, put it on all different websites, put it on your blog, etc. No problem with an OER. You can use multiple channels. As I said, you can put it on a blog, put it on a website. You can attach it to your email and send it out. You can put it on social networking site. Multiple channels are possible with OER. And remember this, you cannot do this with content that is commercially licensed. You would need to get permissions in order to do that. You can have multiple versions of the same concept. And this is an idea that's come into vogue there in the last 25, 30 years, is that learners learn in different ways. And so if you can present a concept in different ways, it can reach more learners. So one learner who doesn't learn in this fashion, they learn in another fashion. And having multiple versions is, I believe, very important in education. And of course, we have the wisdom of the crowd. Is because people often ask, how do you know whether it's good content? Well, if you look and you see all kinds of your colleagues are using the OER, that tells you something. There is wisdom in the crowd that everyone is doing it. I don't know if any of you there use an app like Vivino, where you click on the label of the wine, take a photo, and it'll give you a number that this is 4.5 or 3.2 wine. And it's all from the wisdom of crowds. They get the opinion of hundreds and thousands of people. And quite often, if not nearly always, that seems to be the best opinion. So the wisdom of crowds is also possible. It's good for OER, good for informal and formal learning. So some students who are learning formally, they can also learn other things informally. Or if they're having trouble with their formal learning, they can informally go on the web and find OER that will help them to learn different type concepts, etc. So it's good in both forms, informal and formal learning. You can bridge the gap by increasing access. Personal interest and independent learning can actually be transferred towards formal learning. What they learn as a personal interest using OER can be can be used to get credentials later. Another new issue, well, it's not that new. I think Grania Canol in 2008 was among the first to push it, is that the learner-generated content helps students to learn better. There's new ways of co-constructing ideas. Knowledge created, targeted, and shared becomes internalized by the students much better. So where they actually help to generate the open educational resource. And I think that's a very important idea. She says that students constructing OER, that's reading someone's rich narrative, interpreting it and understanding it and making assumptions about it. This is whereas if they have constructed the OER, it is immediate. The learning is immediate and it has meaning for them. So it's an excellent way of teaching and promoting learning. And again, with OER, we can partner with others, which again, with commercial content, this just is not possible. You would need to get licenses for everybody, and you don't need any license with OER. You can just share, partner, however you like, which allows for, excuse me, mass participation. Excuse me. So people from all over can, and some of the most popular OER, particularly the OER textbooks, are being used now by tens of thousands of students. So it allows people from all over the world can access this, and it allows, and again, it helps us in the move towards education for all, the UNESCO Strategic Development Goal 4. And of course, you can publish, self-publish, production. You produce yourself with your own blog posts, post it on, publish it in any way you like, print it out if you like. Again, OER leaves you free to do that. Individualization is another significant benefit from OER. Where you don't need one size fits all textbook or curriculum. With different OER, we can individualize it and make the content relevant to different students in different age groups, different interests, etc. And of course, we can have online collaborations, and OER, I believe, are essential for online collaborations. To try to do this with commercial content, you're going to run into all kinds of licensing problems, and not only that, much of the commercial content is hampered by digital locks, which I'll be talking about more. Archives, you can archive the OER. They can provide a web-based, viewable, reusable record of quality educational materials, and there are a number of archives available online. And I believe that for international collaborations, where you have a wide variety of different copyright regimes, OER are essential. If you're working with any other copyright regime, the problems of dealing with commercial content, close copyrighted content, will overwhelm you. So OER, again, I will repeat that they are essential for international collaborations. OER are great for blended learning. Again, I've been promoting just online learning, but let's face it, blended learning is here to stay. And I don't think anyone is going to learn any more in the future totally online or totally in a classroom. I think the future is going to be blended. And actually, we're seeing the future being created right now with all kinds of institutions moving towards blended learning. It promotes collaborations, we've said, knowledge sharing, cost savings and efficiency are clear. There's quality improvements in standards alignment. They support independent learning and support communication. So OER are really excellent for blended learning. Or here's something else, another idea. How about another approach to OER implementation? You've got the create approach. You've got the assemble approach, which I'm pushing with OER rather than creating. Or how about the full course? Don't assemble anything. We have an example here in Athabasca where we had a professor who was charged with creating an ethics of computing course. And I was talking to him and I said, why don't you look for some OER? And he said, well, how do you do that? And I said, Google ethical computing course. And he was a bit embarrassed about it because he was a computer science professor and he knew that. But anyway, he did, and I was with him. And we looked down, it wasn't at the top, but halfway down on the front page was Ethical Computing Course, Australian National University. Oh, excuse me. And he looked at it and he said, that's interesting. He went away, and a week later he came back to me. He says, it has everything I need. I don't need to create another course. This is just fantastic. And what he did was he contacted the professor at the Australian National University. And what he did, he created some Canadian examples. The Australian course had a lot of Australian examples, which he used, but he also created Canadian examples, and they started sharing and building this course together. So you can take the full course. You don't need to do, and a lot of teachers, everyone thinks that every teacher wants to be developing courses. Well, no, they don't. In fact, a lot of teachers don't have the talent for developing a course. They have a somewhat of a talent for assembling, but creating, they don't really have a talent. They would love to have the full course. That doesn't mean they're not good teachers. It just means that their talents are in the teaching in the classroom or online, and not so much in the creation of content. And so having the full course is really important for them. So instead of of looking at OER as something that you create, that you assemble and put together, is no, you take the whole course and use it as is, and maybe just make minor modifications for your own uses. Or you can take the whole course and make it as a package or a bundle. And the evidence is showing that OER promotes student success. And this is from the New England Board of Higher Education, where with OER, the retention rates went up significantly. So many students, they found, particularly at the community college level, were dropping out because they couldn't afford the textbooks, or they couldn't get the textbooks until the second or third week of the course. And with OER, they have the textbooks available, or the content, learning content available even before the course. It's freely available online. And so it promotes student success, particularly in retention. And I would like to say this too, and it's important for OER, is that we're thinking of learning-centered, not learner-centered. And that means, what do the students know, or what skill do they have at the end of the course, or even at the end of each lesson? And there is great emphasis today on student engagement, challenges, relevance, personalization, control, and collaboration. And these are all good things. But if there's no learning, they're pointless. The whole point of having engagement, challenging, relevance, personalization, control, etc., is to increase learning achievement of our students. So I think that we need to just rethink this whole idea of learner-centeredness in terms of learning-centeredness. Because if there's no learning, what are we doing as educators? There has to be some learning taking place. And no matter how satisfied, happy, and collaborative that the students are, that is only important as far as it promotes their learning in either in the classroom or online. So you look at the 10 characteristics of learner-centered experiences, and personal reflection models, productive struggle, was it authentic, is there agency, satisfaction, empathy, etc. These are all important things, and I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying. These are all very important. But the important thing, the most important thing for us, is, did the students learn anything? That's what our job is. And I'm stressing this because as the editor of a learning journal, I'm getting between 1 or 2 article submissions every week where they tell me how satisfied and happy and engaged and creative the students were, and they don't tell me anything about whether they learned anything or not. And so it's very frustrating. And what I do is, because I value what they do, what they're doing, I point them to a psychology journal or an educational psychology journal, but not a learning journal. And I think that's very important. And I emphasize that importance in terms of open educational resource, because the open educational resource is there for you to learn something. If students haven't learned anything from the resource, then is it an it's not an educational resource. It could be some other type of resource. Now, OER implementations have shown us a number of things. And one of the main opportunities is, of course, without question, is the dollar savings for students. This is huge. It is a huge area in Canada and the United States. It can reduce the cost of creating courses as well for teachers. It can make teachers more effective because they can alter the material to however they like. You can individualize the course. So these are very important opportunities that are only available with open education resources and not available with commercial content. For faculty, again, we've gone through some of these things. Sharing both internally to your institution and externally. Collaboration with anyone. You can do it freely. The quality, the content and the teaching can be increased. You're more flexible. You're flexible in the legal, technical, and pedagogical areas. So legally, with the license, you can do what you want with it. Technically, you can port it to any kind of technology you desire. And pedagogically, you can change the approach or the techniques in the OER to suit your pedagogical style. There's a time reduction. And by time reduction, we mean that, yeah, if you take a full open educational resource, then you don't have to spend your time creating it. You can just take it and use it. And of course, new pedagogies are very much implicit in many of the open educational resources. Other faculty benefits, no duplication, so you don't have to duplicate content that's already been created. You can update the content yourself very quickly. The technology can be used effectively with OER because you can adjust it to suit the technology. It gives faculty, and this is one that many faculty appreciate greatly, it gave them more time for research, which is big at the university system, but more and more becoming part of our community colleges as well. There's becoming more of an interest in research. And of course, recognition. When people create, assemble, or put together a good OER course or lesson, they get recognized as leaders in the field. And for students, again, let's face it, it's the dollar savings for students. They get quality content. Innovative teaching often accompanies teachers who use OER. The tech formats are open, so they can use their technology with the OER, and it gives easy access to the content. Oh, and for the administration, again, there can be cost savings when courses are assembled or taken wholly as a full course or a full lesson. This brings in cost savings that they don't have to pay more for people to create the content that's needed. Retention of students means big dollars for administrators. If OER help 10 or 15% more students to be retained because they can now afford the textbooks, this is a big savings for administrators. And of course, the policies that come in can really help improve the use of open educational resources. Now, some of the challenges are there. And even in Canada, I hate to say this, well, I'm sure you know it in Saskatchewan, because we have it in rural Alberta and northern Alberta, is they don't have the high bandwidth. They don't have the connectivity. So that certainly is a challenge in delivering to students. And sometimes, because people are a bit overboard with OER, they provide too much content. So the students feel overwhelmed by the amount of content they're given. And rather, limiting the content so as students can focus on the major lessons or principles or skills that need to be learned. They've had problems citing from OER. And of course, printing out OER has been problematic, especially when it's not available in formats that are easily printable. Administrative challenges, again, because you're going online, the infrastructure has to work and be available to all students. And a big one, too, is faculty awareness. This is a problem I've seen over the years, is so many faculty are not even aware of OER. And because they're not aware, nothing happened. But what I find is once the concept of OER is explained to faculty, nearly all of them agree with it. They go along with it. They understand what the whole idea of OER is about. Now, there are a few faculty, very few, I might add, who are making a lot of money from their textbook. And they don't support OER. And you know something? I don't blame them. You know, they're making a lot of money. You know, they don't want the gravy train to end, and so they're not big supporters of OER. But I think that we can just go on with OER and bypass them and continue. And we don't need everybody to agree that OER are important. Other challenges for faculty, some have found that their work overload. And again, I've seen it, that what it is that they focus on creating OER rather than assembling them or taking the full lesson or the full course of OER. And so then they feel that there's overloaded with work. Many are worried about the quality assessment of OER, but the one thing we do know is that having a copyright license as on commercial content or having an open license on OER has nothing to do with the quality. It's just the license. It has nothing to do. There are quality OER and there are OER that don't have the quality. And the same with the commercial content. And the other thing I found too is what teacher A feels is a quality content, teacher B doesn't agree with them. So you have a problem there is we don't always agree on what quality content is. So the more OER that are available, the more choices we have, the more we can choose those that we feel are the quality courses, the quality lessons, etc. Another one are the legal issues. Copyright is sometimes very difficult to understand, and especially in different regimes. And even in Canada now, we're going through a big an experience with the Canadian government bringing in Bill C-16. There's a lot of copyright issues, legal issues that still have to be straightened out. Technical expertise, yes. In order to create many types of OER, you need to have some technical expertise, and or at least be working with somebody who has the technical expertise. And so adapting OER for your conditions, again, can take time, can contribute to work overload. And then others have said searching and finding OER for their particular course has been problematic. And that is true. They're not, some areas, there's all kinds of OER. And in other subject areas, it's difficult to find good content. It hasn't come about yet. So, sorry?
Interrupt. I was just going to mention we've got about 5 minutes left for the presentation. And I see you had a whole section in there in indigenization. I wondered if you might be
I'll
willing.
speed up. Thank you very much. I'll go through these because some of these are repetitive, and I'll get to that. Thank you for that, Donna, because I do want to talk about that innovation. And I can recommend the Commonwealth of Learning. They have some information on it. I won't go into the legal pentalogy other than to say that in Canada, fair dealing must be given a large and liberal interpretation. We have very good fair dealing laws in Canada. So why OER? I won't go into digital rights management other than to say that commercial content has locks on it, and it creates huge problems for teachers. And these locks are always there, and we need to recognize that, which is a really good reason to avoid using that content. And the other one is the digital licenses. Is when you use the content, these digital licenses create major problems for people. And I know nobody ever reads them. I've read quite a few of those digital licenses, and so I believe that we're best to stay away from any content, and that's why I believe that openness is essential for e-learning implementations. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is core to what I believe in as a UNESCO chair. The right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their intellectual property over such cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and other cultural expressions. That's important. So we have to respect that, and we cannot just make OER without the special permissions of the Indigenous peoples concerned. I'd point out the CARE principles for Indigenous data governance. Yes, to be fair, the knowledge needs to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It has to have also, the care is really important, is you're opening it up. It has to have a collective benefit for the Indigenous people. The authority to control this this content is with the Indigenous group, and we have a responsibility and ethically to recognize this. And so we need to be very careful dealing with Indigenous content, and to work very closely with the Indigenous people themselves. And they vary enormously from one culture to another. There are many different Indigenous cultures, and they each have their own way of understanding their reality. And we should be looking at the UBC Okanagan's 6 R's that Kayla Larson has put out. Respect the cultural identity of these communities. We need to connect to the communities. There's a responsibility to share only when allowed to share, and to follow the ownerships, protocols, and community practices of the Indigenous group you're working with. Reverence the sacred. There are sacred things, and Indigenous knowledge in a curriculum only when it makes sense. And there's reciprocity of receiving and giving. So as if you're using their knowledge that they're giving, then we need to be giving back to them. And these are very important principles when we deal with Indigenous communities. So we should ask ourselves, who is driving the creation of the OER? If it's Indigenous knowledge, who's driving it? If it's the community isn't driving it, we need to be very cautious of it. not all Indigenous knowledge wants to be open. And we need to deal with what matters to these Indigenous communities. And some of the successful OER are, of course, the little Cree books that have been put out. So it can be done working with Indigenous people. And I'd like to push, too, that it's not just about OER for Indigenous knowledge. It's also that Indigenous communities want to use OER for professional and skills training, for to build up the professions within their own communities. And so it goes both ways. We're giving our OER to them and for professional and skills training. And because it's OER, we can adapt it in collaboration with the local communities for their needs. And one Indigenous experience that I had many years ago, an important eye-opener for me. Back in 1995, we worked with Burnt Church community in New Brunswick, a Indigenous Mi'kmaq community. And some of the people there said, well, what is this World Wide Web and the internet and computers? This isn't part of our culture. And I responded, well, it's not part of my culture either. I said, we've never seen this before. This is new. This is not anybody's culture. And of course, most of them in the community agreed with that. And they started a program. It was called From Beaver Chips to Microchips. And they started developing culturally relevant content on the web, and even created some culturally relevant games, which sold reasonably well for the time. So there's different ways of looking at technology. And the other one I've had recently is with the Mesquasis Nation in Alberta, and they have adopted a huge number of open educational resources for the benefit of their school. And they even translated the Creative Commons licenses into Cree. So there certainly is support for it, but we have to tread carefully and make sure that we don't be pushing ideas onto Indigenous people if they're not ready for them. When they're ready, they will come out and support open educational resources. And if they want to keep some knowledge, some skills to themselves, they have every right to do that. And again, that right is enshrined in the UNESCO Declaration on Indigenous Rights. So we have to keep that fully in mind. So I have some concluding remarks. Just remember this, that every day computers are making people easier to use. Everything you know is wrong. And so we have to start rethinking of how we're going to deal with this changing future. And artificial intelligence is coming into vogue right now. And we have to learn, what are the relevant learning opportunities? What are the study pathways? What are the personal recommendations? How can AI be used to match employment needs? And all of these things are coming together in a very big way with the development of AI. And I'm sure most of you have heard of what is Chat GPT and how it can create a whole paper. You can just ask it, please write me a paper on such and such a topic, and it'll write one for you. And a lot of them, these papers are really good. I tried it with my colleague, Terry Anderson, setting up a curriculum for distance education training. And we were shocked at how good it was. And we have to come to terms with this. Here's a question for you: is if you can get an essay written by artificial intelligence, then why would you want to write an essay? We have to answer that question as educators. And now AI and copyright. Here's a problem: only humans can own copyright. So whatever comes out of it is public domain. Here's a question: does fair dealing apply to AI produced content? We don't know. There's thousands of creative works that are studied in order to come up with the AI. How much data from each work is there? Some data is open, some of it isn't open. There needs to be a transformative requirement in order for something to be copyrightable. So all of these are really important questions that are just coming up. And if you ask me about them, I'm going to tell you I don't know. This is very new. Very new problems that are coming up. And I can tell you, though, in my past about technology resistance, because a lot are resisting the AI technology, is in the 1830s, the Ontario Teachers Association banned slates from schools. They said that the kids don't know how to roll bark in order to write on, because they're using those expensive slates. So there's always been resistance to technology. Go to the 1950s. I learned to write with a nib pen, and I'm left-handed. And so I wanted to use a biro or a regular pen, and they wouldn't let me. I had to learn how to write with a nib pen, and it was very difficult for me being left-handed. But again, resistance to technology. And in the 1970s, entering university, our professor said, do you know, I bet some of you don't even know what this yellow thing is. It's a slide rule. And our professor said, buy the best slide rule you can afford, because you will be using it for your entire life. And that was the year when the calculators came out, and nobody uses. You only see these things in museums now. So there's always been resistance to technology. There's always been some kind of resistance to anything that's new or helpful, but we need to overcome it. And remember this, that openness is the skeleton key.
We're going to be losing our people here right away. So I just wondered
if I've got 30 seconds. Openness is the skeleton key that unlocks every attempt at vendor control and lock-in. And the Royal Society says that copyright is not in the interest of society. The previous Pope says that an unduly rigid assertion of the right to intellectual property is bad for the world. What does that tell us? That God is on our side. So we are on the side of the angels. Thank you very much. And sorry, I should have spoken faster to get some of the other stuff in, but I hope my enthusiasm at least was evident to you. Thank you. And I'd love to answer questions if there's time.
And I think if anyone is able to stay on for a few minutes, we can certainly keep this floor open and have invite people to ask questions of Professor McGreal. I'm also going to just launch a poll here. Oh dear. No, I'm not. Okay. I was too fast there. I'll be sending a poll out for people to get some responses from them. I wonder if anyone has any questions that they'd like to address to Professor McGreal. We covered a lot of ground today, and I know I had quite a few questions to ask myself. But if someone else would like to, the floor is yours if you want to ask a question at this point. Oh, the poll is back up. Thank you. My assistant here. Sarah has relaunched it. So if you wouldn't mind taking just a minute to work through that before you leave. If not, I will be sending it out afterwards just to get some response from you as well. So I'm not hearing any questions right at the moment, but my one question that I thought I would like to ask you is I'm finding, I've been working on OER and been the OER point person at Saskatchewan Polytechnic for just a little under a year. And one of the questions that I have is I'm calling what's happening with OER. I sort of see it as I'm calling it the Dragon's Den of Treasures. That there's these repositories where we have all these fabulous things that might be there, but it's difficult to find. So I'm wondering what you see, and as a librarian, to me, this is kind of disturbing that I just have to sort of point people to different repositories and say, go find treasures. And that's not really what we do as librarians, is explore Dragon's Den. So I'm wondering what you see the future is for OERs in terms of making them more accessible and assisting people to find things they're looking for.
That's a very good point, Don. And one of the big problems is pointing people to the right places of where they can find things. And there's no unified place. The Creative Commons and OE Global are working on on not one massive repository, but a federated repositories. So as the search engine will go around to all of the different ones, looking for the subject areas and level, etc., of what you're looking for material for. And they are working on that. And it is recognized as one of the biggest problems we need to overcome in the open education resource space. But we're not there yet.
No, it's like I say, if it's not for librarians, it's somewhat disconcerting to have to just point people to different directions and not really have answers for them. One of the other questions that I had is in terms of OERs being providing perhaps a challenge to the academic publishing industry. And I'm also wondering if you had sort of any insights into where the future might take us. I think some academic publishers are certainly feeling the pressure as more OERs are becoming available and more quality OERs are accessible. So where do you think we're going in terms of academic publishing?
I believe we're in a battle scenario at the moment. That they're taking the publishers at present are in this what we call open washing. So they support openness all the time, and they say, "Oh yes, we support openness. Just pay us more money, and we'll license it to you and give you an open license, but pay us huge amounts of money." And they don't say, it's pretty hard to say you're against openness. This is part of their problem. But the other tactic that they're taking is that moving away from publishing and coming up with the online environments where you pay a license to go there, and every student pays so much for a license, and if you don't pay the money, you don't get access to the content, and it's all in there and it's full. And excuse me, where they have OER beat is really they have a lot of course material that leaves the teacher with they don't have to do anything. It's all done for them. The questions are all there, the tests are all there. And with OER, we need to have more of that. We need to have more of that type of course where the whole course is available for a teacher. Because as I pointed out earlier, most teachers are not creative. They don't want to be creating content. Give them the content. They look at it. Yeah, this is good content. And then they'll teach it. And we're behind in that. So where we're going is we have to combat that, and we have to be able to do that in the OER universe. And if we don't, I I don't think we'll win it. But this is happening. This idea of renting courses and renting your learning environment and everything is very big, because it's in all kinds of industries where nobody wants you to own anything anymore. They want you to rent it. And now you buy you're buying a car, an electric car, but you don't buy the software that's in it, and so you have to pay every year for the software. And there's all kinds of people in this space, and so are publishers. They want you to capture you, so as you're all the time paying rent to them in order to continue your education. So OER are wonderful for combating that.
I think maybe just to conclude, if no one else has another question, as the UNESCO chair, you really do have a global perspective on what's happening with OERs. So I'm wondering, from that global perspective, what you see as sort of the major change that OERs can bring about in terms of improving equity, or I don't want to answer the question for you. So what do you see as sort of the major benefit globally of OERs?
Again, it's giving access to quality content for learners all around the world. And we have this OERU initiative, which allows students learners, not students, anybody can come in, access the OER content, take tests to see if they're competent in it. And if they wish to be accredited for it, there are institutions, there's 30 institutions in the consortium around the world now that will allow you to take a test or judge you through prior learning assessment and give you credit for it. And that's one of the ways that OER are reaching out to the world. And this OERU, they've had about 250,000 using it now, which is very small numbers compared to what is needed worldwide. But it's one example of what is possible. The other one is just having open education resources available allows all kinds of people to learn informally, and hopefully at some point get some kind of formal credential for what they know. And that is why we believe it's essential for world education worldwide, is people have to have access to the content. And if you think about it, it's free, easy to do. It doesn't cost much to share content. And could you imagine if food was free, easy to replicate and make available, and we held it back from people and wouldn't let them have it? I mean, knowledge is now in that situation. And there are people, commercial companies, that want to hold back and stop people from accessing the content. So opening up is the way to go. And I believe it is happening all around the world. And we're working now on a UniTwin network, a United Nations network of open education resource chairs in 10 different countries. And we're working together to support OER development internationally. Another issue, if I have time for that, is a lot are concerned about there's too much coming from the developed world and not enough coming from the underdeveloped world. And they want to change that dynamic so as that there's more and more content coming from there, and not everything just being developed there. And even in Canada, I've noticed a lot of teachers don't like using American material. So it even affects Canada in that sense.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to bring this to a close. I appreciate it. A few people that were able to stay a little bit longer for the presentation. There's so much more to this conversation there's so many places we could go with this. But it was lovely to have you join us today and to bring your perspective and to share it with some people at CES Polytech and some of our other guests that joined us through the OER Week site. So thank you so much. I just want to express my appreciation on behalf of everybody that was able to attend today. And we have a note here from Amanda who says, thank you so much for an informative presentation. I appreciate the teacher's perspective you gave about not necessarily being creators. Absolutely. So we will be talking more about that on Monday. I have a session coming up on Monday as part of the OER Express. So please, think about joining that. Time constraints also affect teachers' abilities to create content. I agree that OERs can support teachers and students greatly. So thanks also from our participants, and I will bring this to a close.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me and supporting open education resources. And thank you, Donna, for the kind invitation to speak to your faculty. I appreciate it. I want to spread the word as much as possible. Take care.
Absolutely. Okay.